to reach this state, is these are the three key things. There's a lot of things, but these are the three key things. One is the psychological meaningfulness. And so this is where the employees find their work worthwhile. So if an employee thinks that the work that they do is significant and they find their work worth the effort that they put in, then they're likely to show up fully, to show up as their full selves in the work that they do. But also a lot of the level of engagement that is observed in employees has to do with the resources at their disposal. So this includes their personal resources, so things like a person's individual network, but also a person's motivation, self-motivation towards their work, a person's access to things like coaches, perhaps therapists. So these are their own resources, but also includes home resources. So what kind of support and I could say engagement they get at their home, and also organizational resources. So what resources does the organization provide for this person to be able to do their work? This can include anything really in terms of the organizational resources, from the tools that they need. So for example, in order to join the webinar, need a computer, I need a connection to the internet, and I need a lot of other tools in my day-to-day work. But I also need things like my supervisor's support in my work. I also need things like my job to be designed in a way that I'm motivated to do it. So all of these fall under the organizational resources category. And last but not least, a very important driver of employee engagement is psychological safety, which is how safe a person feels speaking up in the organization. So knowing that them sharing their concerns, especially with supervisors, with upper management, that it will not be met with negative consequences on themselves or on their work. And this is important because when a person is able to share their feelings, is able to share their concerns, is able to share any problems that they're facing, and have this problem then worked upon and addressed, they feel heard and they feel that their voice, their opinion counts in that organization. And this is a motivating thing, and it motivates employees to keep showing up fully in the work that they do. So these are the drivers that contribute to levels of engagement that we observe in different organizations. But why engagement matters, there's been a lot of research done on this topic, and low employee engagement has been linked to things like turnover, which again is expensive for organizations, poor performance, leading to a lot of losses for organizations, absenteeism, again, costing organizations productivity. And a report that was published last year by the company Gallup estimated that in 2024, the world or the global economy lost $8.9 trillion to low levels of employee engagement. And so we see that there's a very dire cost of having low employee engagement in the organizations. And it's something that we ought to pay a lot of more attention to. And of course, on the flip side, employee engagement has also been linked with very positive outcomes, including increased levels of innovation, of productivity, retention in the organizations, of course, because people are happy, are valued, their opinions are welcomed, they have the resources they need to do the work that they have to, but also well-being. And so this is a quick snapshot of, and I've covered this before, but again, I don't mind repeating it, of what we have discussed so far about employee engagement. And so before we move on to me introducing our engagement model, I'd like for you to answer this quick question, which is going to appear on your screens with regards to employee engagement. Right. So the question is, in your opinion and in your experience, who plays a bigger role in driving employee engagement? Please feel free to just vote. I have a few responses coming in. I'll give people a few more seconds. So, yeah, I'm going to end the poll. So the question was, in your experience, who plays a bigger role in driving employee engagement? And we seem to have a equal division, I could say, between the options which are the organization, both equally, meaning the employee and the organization, and the fact that it depends on the context. And interestingly, nobody picked the employee, but of course, there's options that say both equally and depends on the context. So let's see. Let's see, according to our model, what we say about this, about the people who drive employee engagement. So this is the Zanga model of employee engagement, and it is this model is meant to highlight the dynamic loop that employee engagement happens or exists as a result of efforts put in by both the organization and the employees. And it's a mutual investment, but it's also mutual benefit when it's done right. So it's very important that the context and how things are done is taken into account when trying to achieve high levels of employee engagement and the outcomes that are associated with it. So we have developed this model from aggregation of research on the topic. Again, there's been a lot of research on the topic, but also we have consulted subject matter experts. As we have been mentioning, we design tools for high context cultures. And so we have talked to various management leadership experts from the area, from high context cultures, to get their opinion and to get their insight on what drives employee engagement in our context. And so with this dynamic loop here, we see how the organization, the employee together bring about the engaged workforce, and how this engaged workforce now also benefits the employee and the organization. And I will be going through individual, I'll say, arrow sets to look at the relationships for each key factor or key player more closely. And just for as a general observation here, where the green arrow goes, this is how the key player, that specific key player nurtures the other. And so with the organization, they nurture or they encourage employees to have high levels of employee engagement when they put in a good level or adequate job, social, and organizational resources. As a result, also the employee contributes specifically or themselves personally to an engaged workforce by virtue of how career-oriented they are, their behavior in the workplace, but also psychological issues such as the efficacy, which is the belief, how much they believe that they can achieve certain things. And with the orange arrows, that's meant to indicate now how the other key player contributes back to the initial key player as a result. So with the engaged workforce, how individual employees stand to benefit from it is through career growth opportunities, but also engagement. An engaged workforce is also linked to higher levels of well-being in the workplace, which ultimately everybody aims to achieve in the workplace. But also what employees now invest back or gives back to organizations when there's a high level of resources, which drive high levels of engagement, is now the evidence of their cognitive or mental, emotional, and physical commitment, which we had discussed initially. And of course, the benefits of an engaged workforce towards an organization include the improved performance, reduced turnover, job satisfaction, and optimized leader succession. We're going to look at these relationships a bit more closely in order to see how they are related to each other and how ultimately they relate to the employee engagement. So the first relationship set that we have is the organization and the employee. So as I had asked in the initial poll, I had asked whether you think there's one key player who contributes more to employee engagement than the other. And here we see for employees and the organization, they both have something to contribute to each other and in turn to employee engagement. So with organizations, they are in control of a lot of factors that directly influence an employee's organizational levels of engagement at the workplace. So, for example, with job resources, things like the tools at their disposal, as discussed, how much employees have access to feedback in their roles, what learning and development opportunities people have in their jobs. These are all resources around how a person's job is designed that can really influence how engaged they are in that role. But also organizations have a big role to play in directly providing and influencing social resources. And this includes like spaces and opportunities to build for individuals to build their networks. So I know we probably have seen a lot of articles and news segments about companies like Google having big areas for lunch and recreation where people can come out during their breaks and talk to each other. And I know we're not all Google, but having these common spaces is a good initiative for organizations because you give people the space to actively socialize with their group members or their coworkers. But also resources like the job design and the leadership are also key resources in influencing a person's employee engagement. And this actually, the job and the social resources are tied to another very interesting theory of motivation, whereby these psychologists Ryan and Deci they propose that an employee's motivation comes from them having three key elements which are in their roles, which are autonomy. So autonomy around, for example, how they do their tasks, where they do their tasks from. So working from home has become a very big issue. And here, how the organizational resources come in is, for example, what are their policies about working from home? What are their policies about the variety of tasks that a person can take on in their jobs? So that's how the job is designed. But also Ryan and Desi, they put forward that a person's competence, ability to feel like they're competent is also a big influence on their motivation as employees. So this is achieved, or a person's ability or competence, level of competence that they feel in their role can be influenced by things like the chances that they're given or opportunities that they're given to take on tasks that perhaps are not within their daily tasks or are not within something that they would usually do. And also relatedness. So relatedness, this is opportunity to build relationships and socialize, which we were just discussing, that the organization has influence over things like the spaces that they provide, activities like team building, but also who a person works with on a daily basis in their roles. They are also key factors that influence a person's level of engagement. But now organizations, the employees now, how they nurture the organizations or how they influence employee engagement is by directly showing the behaviors that we have associated with employee engagement from the beginning, which is the mental commitment, which can be seen through a person's initiative. So how often perhaps they think of new creative ways of solving problems, of helping others. So this is all engaging their brain capacity in going above and beyond their roles, but also the emotional dedication. So do they have a positive affect for their work and their organization? What do they feel about the work that they do? Sometimes it can even be displayed in how do they talk about their work and the organization that they work for. This is all a measure of the emotional dedication or emotional bond that they have with the work and the organization. And physical effort, this can be seen through the level of discretionary effort that somebody chooses to put in their roles. So obviously, different people choose to put a different level of effort physically in their work. And there's obvious differences between somebody who goes above and beyond and somebody who does the bare minimum and somebody who does just enough or just what they have to do in the roles. And this can show the level of engagement that they are having in that role as well. So that is a relationship between the employee and the organization within the Zanga model of employee engagement. But also we have seen in the original triangle and dynamic loop that there is a relationship between the employee and the engaged workforce, which the engaged workforce is the outcome that we're looking for in this situation. So what let's start with the employee. What an employee contributes to an engaged workforce is, or how they personally can influence or create a larger engaged workforce is through things like their career orientation. So different people have different attitudes towards how they want their careers to go, whether they want to grow in their roles, whether they have higher aspirations than the roles that they currently occupy. And when employees are more career-oriented, when they're more goal-oriented, when they have high aspirations, they're more likely to put in effort because they have a goal that they're working towards, but also the behavior in the workplace. So things like whether employees are team players, the amount of ownership over the tasks that they take. These are behaviors that an employee can show at their own discretion, but they're also linked to the level of engagement that they're having and they're showing in the workplace. But also self-efficacy, like we discussed previously, this is a psychological term, which is just meant to refer to how or whether a person feels like they can achieve something. So it's confidence, but in achieving or doing a specific thing. And with people who are more confident, with people who have higher levels of self-efficacy, then they'll be more likely to try new things, more likely to go outside of their comfort zones, more likely to perhaps not compete with their coworkers, but collaborate with them because they have the self-assuredness that they're able to do a certain thing and they're not perhaps trying to prove a point or just doing things to get ahead. But also an engaged workforce has something to contribute to the individual employee. Usually when we think of high levels of employee engagement, we talk about it in the context of how an organization stands to gain something from it. But actually, even the individual employees gain a lot from having an environment or a workplace with high levels of employee engagement. So when an employee is, for example, what we have discussed, career-oriented, having high levels of self-efficacy, they take ownership of their tasks and their work, we are more likely to see, and research has actually proven that such employees have higher levels of career growth. They grow faster, they grow to higher levels than people who do not show this. So these behaviors, even though they are attributed or they are related to high levels of employee engagement, they are also very advantageous to the employees themselves, as in for their career growth, but also for their well-being, because as we discussed, there's also elements of socializing, building a support network, and having people at work who support and look out for you. So this is the relationship between the employee and the engaged workforce here. But also a third dimension of the Zanga Employee Engagement Model is the relationship now between the engaged workforce and the organization, which is what we have been discussing, that when there's high levels of employee engagement in an organization, this contributes to improved employee performance, but also reduced turnover rates and costs for the organization. There's also been studies to show that there's been links to, so when employees are more engaged, when they show high levels of commitment to their work, their goals, and their tasks, they are also more oriented toward the customers that they're serving. And when the customers are happy, then the company also enjoys the benefits of customer retention and performance, productivity, and others. But also improved employee job satisfaction. More employees are satisfied and happy with their jobs when there's a high level of employee engagement in the workplace. And also there's a optimized leader succession, because employees are taking more ownership of their work. They're more goal-oriented. That means there's more people in the organization that are fit to become leaders and lead the organization towards the goals that they desire to achieve. So that is, I'll just show it one more time. So those elements together, or those dimensions together, formulate the Zanga model of employee engagement, which shows the relationship between the organization, the employee, and an engaged workforce, and what each key role player in this model, or in this dynamic relationship, has to invest, but also what they stand to gain from each other and from the engaged workforce. So that is the Zanga model of employee engagement. And before we move on to the next section, sorry, I also have a quick question for you here. Yes. So the question is, what have you observed being the biggest challenge in sustaining employee engagement in organizations? I believe we've all had some type of work experience in different organizations, companies, different sizes, perhaps even different countries. So what, in your opinion, have you observed being the biggest challenge or the biggest thing that's holding back the sustaining of employee engagement? We have some options for you here: the lack of employee motivation or ownership, insufficient leadership support, limited resources or tools, the fact that engagement isn't measured or tracked, but also maybe you're unsure and you are new to the engagement conversation. That's also okay. Right. Okay, I'll give you a few more seconds to answer. Okay. Great. So we have a good mix of opinions here, with most of us saying, actually, we think that it was the lack of employee motivation or ownership of their tasks that stopped organizations or limited organizations from achieving high levels of employee engagement. And I do agree that there are a quite significant number of employees who are not motivated or lack ownership. And again, that is there's a lot of factors that contribute to it, some personal, some contextual. But of course, the second highest voted opinion here is the insufficient, it's a tie between insufficient leadership support and the fact that engagement isn't measured or tracked. And so, yes, leaders have a big role to play. And in our previous discussion, we discussed how leader support is the most key when compared to other drivers of employee engagement. The support that they receive from leaders was the most significant antecedent for people's levels of engagement. And when engagement isn't adequately measured, it's not tracked, then for most organizations, it means they do not have the insight, they do not have the data to now implement strategies, evidence-based strategies to improve the levels of engagement that they're observing. And of course, sometimes there's limited resources or tools that are available to employees, which again is very detrimental to their motivation, productivity, and the level of engagement that they show in their work. Right. So the good news is at Zanga African Metrics, we have a suite of tools that you can use at different levels for different key role players of engagement that we discussed. Remember, we discussed the individual employee and the role that they have to play. We briefly touched on leaders, but also we talked about leaders more extensively in our last webinar. And also we've talked about the organization not having enough insight, and it's been some of the opinion of some of us in the last question that the levels of employee engagement suffered, in your opinion, because engagement wasn't adequately measured and tracked in the organizations that you've worked for. And so Zanga has a suite of tools that can help at every of these levels to diagnose where the issues are, what needs improvement, and actually these tools not only diagnose, they also suggest strategies to be implemented in order to improve the levels of engagement that you're seeing at the individual, at the team, and also at the organizational level. And so first, we have the individual assessment. We have seen and talked about how work behavior is a contributor to the engagement that a person is showing. And so we have a behavior assessment, which helps a person reflect on and reveals their strengths and their development areas in key aspects of the way that they behave in the workplace. So this includes business approach, their mindset, their relationships, how they execute different things, how they are aware of different cultural factors that go on in the workplace. And in measuring all of these aspects, we also provide strategies for how you can improve on whether it's a strength, how you can lean more into it and get more out of it. And if it's a development area, so how you can start working on it so that you improve not only yourself, but also the engagement and the results for the organization. As we have discussed, personal resources are key in driving employee engagement, but they're also key in driving a person's own personal growth. But also we have the 360 assessments, which now is a tool that helps a person, in addition to the individual assessment, where a person fills in their own assessment or their own assessment. The 360 assessment gives people the opportunity to get feedback from different people that they work with, including their supervisors, their direct reports, and their peers, who are able to now tell or assess them on based on how they have been working with them, on what, again, their strengths are, what their development areas are. And, and actually, when these assessments are filled, it's not like they are being, it's not like we ask you to directly say, what do you think about this person? It's a lot of questions about how you observe them working on a day-to-day basis. And at the end, we are able to produce a report of which interprets what that means in terms of their strengths and their development areas. And what this is, how this is better than the individual assessment is it gives the extra perspective, the extra insight from how other people see you. So there could be other things that perhaps you're not considering as your strengths, or you're not seeing yourself as things that are holding you back, but they are great. Other people would be great sources of insight and can reveal that information that you can start working on to improve yourself. And if you're a leader, to also improve the team, to also improve the company and the engagement levels at large. But also, we are looking to launch very soon an engagement survey. This is a tool that can help now track the engagement levels at the organizational level and see how, for example, different departments are feeling about where their levels of engagement are, or how they're feeling about the different tools and resources at their disposal, how they're feeling about supervisor support and other resources that the organization is providing, and what actions the organization can take from that level, from a much larger level, to improve the employee engagement levels that they are observing. And of course, we'll have strategic, tailored surveys plus tailored strategies for improvement. So that concludes my presentation for today. And my key takeaways for you guys who have joined us today is that, one, engagement takes mutual effort. So the individual employees, the leaders, the organization, they all have a role to play in having optimal levels of employee engagement. But also the organizational structure, the behavior, they matter. And actually, both the organization and individuals stand to gain from high levels of employee engagement. And we should not look at it as a one-dimensional thing, that perhaps only the organization is what stands to benefit. It's also very beneficial for individuals to be engaged in their workplace. As we have seen, it has effects on their career growth, their well-being as well. And so it's beneficial for both the organization and the employees. And also, last but not least, we have a suite of tools developed by researchers that can help give you insight at the individual level, at the team level, at the organizational level, about the different behaviors, the different strengths, development areas, and overall engagement levels that can help you understand what's happening in your organization, in your team, in you as an individual with relation to your work, and how you can improve so that you personally see the positive outcomes you're looking for, but also that you're rooting for the organization to achieve. So that is my presentation for today. And thank you again for joining us on this last webinar on employee engagement for this year. But stay tuned, we will have much more webinars for different themes in the upcoming quarters. So over to you, Amadeus.
Thank you very much, Doreen. This was exciting, much appreciated. We are now getting into the Q&A part of the webinar. And I see a couple of questions already in the chat, and some questions have been sent to me. So we'll definitely get going. And by the way, if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat. We are here to answer them for the next 15 minutes or so. While we do that, we would love to get your feedback on this webinar, on kind of questions you may have. So while we answer your questions, we'll be projecting this just now. Please have a look at our feedback form and let us know what you think. I'm also putting a link to this Google feedback form in the chat. It's super short. You can do it in a few minutes while we get through the questions. And indeed, well done, Doreen. We're getting wonderful presentation. Thank you, Doreen. Great presentation. And it has been. So let's dive right into the questions. So Holly Louise asks, does the assessment tool indicate the engagement level quantitatively? That's a very good question. Over to you.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, that is a good question. So I assume by the assessment tool, you're meaning the individual assessment and 360. I'm not sure.
No, which
No.
assessment are you
Do you mean the
referring to?
engagement survey?
Yeah, the engagement survey.
Oh, thank you, Holly. Yes, it will. We haven't launched it yet, but yes, it will. It will indicates the engagement level quantitatively. So how we're looking to do it is have a quantitative engagement index, which is a number which represents the strength of engagement on a scale of 1 to 10 for the whole organization. But it will also be broken down into departments and again, the levels of engagement on a scale of 1 to 10. So it's going to be quantitative indication of the engagement levels based on the aggregation of the survey results, but it will also be there will also be qualitative, there'll be options for people who fill in the survey to have qualitative answers about their opinions. And we'll have also strategies for how to improve the engagement levels that I received on the report. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. All right. If anybody has any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I have a question that was sent into us. What differentiates this model from traditional employee engagement frameworks? Good question. So, Doreen, what does differentiate this Zanga model from traditional employee engagement frameworks?
Right. So my observation of traditional employee engagement survey models is that they would say how a certain maybe resource or a certain aspect relates to employee engagement and how that relates to organizational results. And so the results or the output were always presented in terms of what the organization stands to gain from high levels of employee engagement and the resources that they put in. And so our model, the uniqueness of our model is that we have a dynamic loop that shows the different key players and how what they're putting in to achieve employee engagement levels, but also what they're getting out of it. And so it shows more clearly, compactly, the relationship that is between the organization, high engagement, but also employees and individual employees. And I think this is important. We thought this is important to include what individuals stand to get, because usually how people see it as I explained earlier, is just something that the organization benefits from, but not necessarily the employees. And it's very important that we highlight that employees also stand to gain a lot from high levels of employee engagement individually, but also so do organizations, and what also they should put in or invest in order for that to come to pass. So I would say that is the uniqueness, that is the difference between our model and other traditional models that I have observed. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Doreen.
Of course.
Amazing. Once again, a reminder, we really want to hear from you, your questions. We would love for you to give us feedback. Please take a minute or two to fill out our feedback form. The link is in the chat, and a handy QR code that you can scan on your phone. If you're not watching this on your phone, is on the screen. We have another question that has been sent directly to me.
Yeah.
Doreen, have you noticed if there's any difference in the perception of what people expect an organization to provide in Africa as compared or as a meaning of how much the organization takes care of them. So how do is there a difference in the perception of what people expect an organization to provide in Africa? How the meaning of how much the organization takes care of is over to you.
Thank you. I think that is a very interesting question, and definitely I myself, having worked and lived both Africa and out of Africa, but also in my line of work, I've come across different levels of values, or I've noticed that people place value in different things in different contexts. And so, and the way also they interpret these things when they're provided is quite different. So, for example, in Africa, things like meals, when an employer provides meals, when an employer provides transportation to and from work, I've noticed that they have a different perception of this, and it's taken more positively, and they take it to mean that an employer cares and cares for them more than I have seen in other contexts. In other contexts, I have rarely observed that being even like a practice that is done as much as it is in Africa, that employees are given meals, employees are given transportation. So these logistical support that helps them for transportation get to work on time. There's a lot of traffic issues. There's a lot of dispersed places where employees live, for example, but also stay productive, have energy to work through the provision of meals is something that I've seen that is quite unique to the African workplaces, and definitely very valuable. And I haven't observed that being the case in other contexts, I wouldn't say. So yes, there are unique aspects of engagement that we have to consider in different contexts. And that is something that we are also going to incorporate in our survey. So questions including that, like where do employees place value? What do employees place value in this organization that helps them feel committed and have a positive attitude towards their organization and their work? So yeah.
Thank you very much. There is a follow-up question that has been sent on this particular
Okay.
and that is,
yeah.
how does the Zanga Employee Engagement Survey pick this up?
Yes, so I had started to mention this briefly in my previous answer. So the way we're picking this up is since this is not something that is presented in traditional employee engagement surveys, we're looking to have people's opinions about it. So uniquely, we will have, in addition to the survey items, which are the questions on a rating scale, we will also have questions where employees will be invited to rank different resources and their influence on their levels of commitment, their influence on the attitude that they have towards the organization. So things like what we just discussed here, the logistical support that they get in order to be more productive, things like their relationship with their coworkers, which is also something that is very important in high context cultures. I was reading something just earlier today that highlighted that things like feedback are more they have more influence they have a bigger influence on employee engagement in high context cultures, in collectivistic cultures. So we're looking to get these nuances, to understand them, so that the tools and the suggestions and the strategies that we give to businesses in high context cultures based on the engagement levels are more tailored to the context and to what we're observing within the employees and also within the wider context of high context cultures. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Doreen. Please, if there are any further questions about this, put them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask the question. But I have one more that has been sent. And again, I encourage everyone who would like to give us some feedback, fill out the form. repost the link in our chat, and the QR code is on the screen. So the question we have is, what's the best starting point for applying the Zanga model in a small organization? That is the Zanga model for employee engagement.
Yes. So for a small organization, right? So for a small organization, there is a lot of I think there's some unique advantages to small organizations that they shouldn't ignore in trying to achieve high levels of employee engagement. And that involves how agile they are, how easily they can adapt and adjust because it's a small number of people. But of course, that doesn't mean that they should blindly enforce strategies to try to improve the levels of engagement. I would still advise for them to start, even if it's a small organization, with a basic survey of how employees feel about different aspects of their work. And from there, try out different strategies. And we will have different strategies with our engagement survey reports on how the individuals can improve their personal resources, how the organizations can work and provide more better or perhaps more relevant resources. Because I know we were just discussing, for example, in African workplaces, there are some aspects or some resources that are more valued than others. And so this could also be the case for smaller organizations with compared to big organizations, but also different industries. And so this survey helps to pick up these nuances in the unique resources and the unique needs that are being shown by the employees and how organizations can respond. So that would be how I'd advise a small organization to do it. So start with a simple survey, and we can help you with that, and then inform strategies based on your industry, based on the employee feedback that you get, that you can try to improve engagement surveys. Engagement levels, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Engagement. Indeed. Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic. This brings us to the end of this webinar. We want to thank you all for joining us. We want to thank you for watching the stream on LinkedIn, or if you're watching this in future on our YouTube channel, we have a YouTube channel where these replays are made available for you.
Yeah.
You can actually watch our entire catalog of webinars there, so you can watch the entire series. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate you. We hope this is valuable for you. Please join future webinars. We host these on the last Thursday of every month. And Doreen has already promised us something exciting for the next quarter, since our series engagement has come to an end. And we all look forward to having you there. We're also looking forward to the launch of the Zanga Employee Engagement Survey, and monitor our socials, especially LinkedIn, for news on that, because that will be coming, God willing, soon. Thank you so much. Have a blessed evening, wherever and whenever you are, and we will see you here next time. God bless and good night.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.